This episode is brought to you by the Conscious Combo Network and the Black Boy Fly Club. Go to www.blackboyfly.club to learn about the movement, get books, merch, and just get connected with the brand overall. Again, www.blackboyfly.club. I hope you enjoy the next episode. Welcome to the first episode of the Black Boy Fly podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Isaac Addae. So excited to get this kicked off. The first episode of Black Boy Fly. Going to be a lot of great discussions in store, conversations with me, conversations with other individuals, other Black men out there in the world that are flying and achieving greatness. I wanted to use this first episode to just give you guys a little bit of background on what Black Boy Fly really means, what it is, what it's about, how folks are receiving this whole idea, and then what you can expect coming forth on the show. This whole idea of Black Boy Fly came to me in 2016. I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Black Boy Fly. I was thinking about what I was going to call my first book, and that title appeared. I think God just sent that vision to me. Came from a couple of places. First, Kendrick Lamar is one of my favorite artists, and on his album, he has a song called Black Boy Fly, and this song talks about Black men elevating out of their circumstances. Also, there's a book by the name of Richard Wright called Black Boy, and Richard Wright is one of my favorite authors. He actually grew up in the area where I finished high school near Natchez, Mississippi. So those are the two themes that came together in my mind, formed this idea of Black Boy Fly. Now, if you've been keeping up with me, I put the book out toward the end of 2021, sold almost 500 copies so far. It's been well received, but the idea is much bigger than just a book. All right. When we think about men and Black men in particular, we hear a lot of things about how Black men struggle. Black men have the highest rates of suicide. Black men are dealing with all of these other types of challenges. And while we see a lot of platforms and workshops and conferences dedicated toward empowering Black women, my friends and I often talk about how we don't see enough out there to empower Black men. And so, this idea of Black Boy Fly, this brand, this movement, the book, and the podcast, everything associated with this concept is all about uplifting our brothers, empowering our brothers, helping them fly toward greatness, while also understanding that you're going to hit roadblocks, you're going to face challenges in your life, but you can overcome those challenges. You can fly high in your personal and in your professional life. That's essentially what Black Boy Fly is about. Now, the way in which I approach this concept, especially when I'm talking to groups of young men about what Black Boy Fly means, I break it down into three parts: purpose, influence, and change. In my mind, I really believe that if you're going to be great, you have to have a strong understanding of purpose. You have to know what are the influences in your life, and you have to be willing to make the change that you need to make to become the person that you're intended to be. So, Black Boy Fly is about understanding purpose, understanding influence, understanding change. And in future episodes, I'll break down each one of those. Let me just give you a little bit of background about me. I'm a first generation Ghanaian American. My parents left Ghana in the 70s. I'm the firstborn child. First experiment that I like to say is going well so far. I had a lot of things that I had to overcome over the course of my 40 years of life, many good, many bad. And the bad things really had me in positions where I just felt stuck at times. I really believe that if it weren't for the people around me, specifically the other Black men around me that poured into me, kept me encouraged, motivated, and uplifted, I don't know that I'm actually sitting here as the person that I am today. That's the power of this whole idea of Black Boy Fly. It's about us as Black men helping other Black men elevate, helping them achieve, helping them discover their purpose, helping them tap into their greatness. All Black men are intended to fly. That's the whole thing. That's my whole idea behind all of this. And my goal is just to inspire and empower as many Black men as I can. So, in future podcast episodes, you'll hear me talking a lot about my journey and my story, but I'm also bringing other men on the show. I want to hear from brothers all around the world who are doing great things, who've overcome some of the most extreme circumstances or some of the biggest challenges, found their way towards success, found their way toward greatness. We're going to use those stories as a way to empower other brothers. So when people tune into this podcast, they're going to hear from a regular guy who's doing incredible things, who's achieved greatness, but also had some struggles and some challenges that they had to overcome along the way. That's my whole idea behind this. Black Boy Fly. All right. Now, when I think about purpose, it took me a while to really understand what my purpose was. I had to overcome, I think, what held me back in many ways, right? First off, being bicultural, growing up in a Ghanaian household, but in Black communities, I often found myself struggling to figure out who I was and going back and forth between two worlds just to get a sense of, man, who are you, Isaac? Are you Ghanaian? Are you Black? I'm both. But it took me a while to figure that out. That was something I think that was a struggle for me in terms of identity. But once I had a great sense of identity, I was able to lock in on purpose. Now, for those who are wondering, I started out my career in engineering. I went to Tennessee State University, majored in electrical engineering, got a master's in engineering, started my engineering career. But for me, that idea of being an engineer went all the way back to when I was in the eighth grade. So I locked in on that idea, reached that goal, and at some point along that journey, realized I don't know that I want to do this anymore. It wasn't about engineering per se. I had found myself in a career that I had longed for, but I wasn't fulfilled by. And that's when I first realized how important purpose was from a career perspective. I had always thought about purpose from just a life perspective, but I found myself unfulfilled in a good paying job at a great company. And I realized, I have to really understand how my purpose will play itself out as it relates to my career. So I made some career transitions. I left engineering. I went into the academic world. I spent 7 years in the academic world. I recently left the academic world, and now I'm in the entrepreneurial space, helping build a tech company and also building this Black Boy Fly brand. And so for me, this idea of purpose, what I realize is that it's a journey more of a destination. I used to think purpose was this place that you arrive. It's actually not that. I think that as you go through life, you're fulfilling your purpose as your journey unfolds. Now, let's talk a little bit about influence. For me, I had a lot of influences in my life growing up. My parents and immediate and extended family, but most importantly, my Ghanaian ancestry and the cultural teachings that come with it. That was a big influence on me. It shaped a lot about how I think, how I act, how I view the world. It also shaped how I pursued careers, how I pursued relationships, because I was trying to do everything based on what I was taught. But along the way, I had to really take a step back and think about what those cultural influences were, what those societal influences were, and even what those social influences were, and kind of step away from everything that I had been indoctrinated to believe and really unpack who I was and why was I the way that I was. Once I started going down that path and I better understood what was influencing me, that allowed me to have a clearer sense of self. And also, it allowed me to determine what I wanted to be influential in my life, right? When you're growing up, you don't necessarily have full control over those influences. But once you become an adult, you have the ability to position yourself in spaces and around people to get the influence that you want. Also, let's talk a little bit about change. For me to achieve what I've achieved in my life, having a doctorate degree in business, two engineering degrees, multiple career opportunities, awards, lots of impact, all of that came with me being able to embrace change. Now, change is hard. And I think as human beings, we are just naturally resistant to change. But for me, by the time I finished high school, I had lived in about four different states and I had attended about eight different schools. So growing up, I moved around quite a bit. And I think that initially helped me become somewhat more amenable to change because I had to always adjust. As an adult, what I realized is in order for me to become the person that I wanted to become, I had to undergo changes, right? I wanted to become an engineer. So I went and studied engineering and I evolved a lot as a person along that journey. I wanted to be successful in the corporate world. Well, I had to develop the skill sets and evolve as a person to thrive in the business arena, right? I wanted to become a professor. I had to go through the process of getting a doctoral degree, which fundamentally changed who I am and changed how I look at the world. I wanted to become a father, wanted to be married. All of these things that I desire to accomplish in life require me to undergo fundamental internal changes so that I can realize my full potential. And that's why whenever I'm mentoring or speaking or coaching folks, I always talk to them about what are the things that you have to do to get to where you want to be. And often that is, what are those changes that you need to undergo? How do you need to transform? How do you need to evolve as a person? I find that that's really important along this journey. So if we're all going to fly as we're intended to, right? And if we're all going to achieve that greatness, I want you to really sit back and think about, how does purpose, influence, and change resonate with you, resonate with your journey, and how understanding those things are going to help you achieve that greatness that you're intended to achieve. All right. I'm glad that you tuned in to this first episode. I'm looking forward to sharing so much more content with you all through this Black Boy Fly podcast platform. Look forward for more commentary from me, as well as interviews from some other Black men that are out there flying in the world. Stay tuned. Thanks.